Hello and welcome to IPC APEX Expo 2024. We've got a very busy show for you this week. The show floor itself is extremely busy. A lot of international visitors here this week because, of course, it's sharing the stage with the ECWC, which is the Electronic Circuit World Convention. My first guest this morning to talk about the state of the industry is Sean Dubrovac, I'm sorry, Sean Dubrovac. And of course, you're responsible for the financial side of IPC and been able to look at the industry and give us an update on the health of the industry.
Yeah, I'm IPC's chief economist.
Yeah, so let's take it away and give us an update of where we're standing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, things are looking pretty good. When I'm looking at the industry, we're obviously, we focus strongly on things like orders and shipments. We've overcome a lot of supply chain constraints,
yes,
which is helping now. I do think we're moving into a period of moderation, but given where we are in the cycle, things are actually have held up quite well.
Right. So do you think that most of the manufacturers have worked through all that excess inventory they had on the component side from the back end of COVID?
I think that manufacturers and supply chain managers are constantly adjusting, right? Mm-hmm. They're constantly adjusting to issues in the supply chain, whether it's costs. You know, we've seen copper prices rising lately, right, and some supply issues there that have caused prices to go up. So they're making adjustments there. We've seen a bridge collapse in Baltimore, so that impacts some companies, and so they have to start to make adjustments there. So supply chain management is about constantly making adjustments, and so I think that is an ongoing process that we will go through forever.
Absolutely. So I mean, you look at obviously the state of the industry from a global perspective. You look at across the entire supply chain. What are some of the leading indicators that you're looking for?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we look at orders, we look at shipments. I think the other thing to note is that we're at a very interesting point in our transition, if you will, or in our history, where you are seeing some manufacturing capabilities and capacity moving to North America. Mexico has obviously benefited from that. The U.S. has benefited from that. We've seen movements within Asia as manufacturers work to diversify some of their supply chain. So you've seen a lot of dynamic changes, and I think we're just at the cusp of many of those changes. Here in the U.S., for example, you've had a number of legislative initiatives that have driven investment into the manufacturing sector, whether you're looking at the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Adjustment Act, or others. And we're right now seeing a tremendous amount of investment going into construction, especially in the manufacturing sector. So this is all capacity that's going to come online in the coming years. And so I think that is a very positive force in what's happening within the industry more broadly, is some of these shifts that are taking place. Some of it obviously a result of the pandemic, looking to make supply chains more agile, looking to make them more resilient. But there is much more at stake, I think, than just the aftermath of the pandemic. Right.
I mean, just this week alone, we had TSMC announcing a third fab in Arizona, $65 billion, incredible amount of money. Do you think we're going to end up in a situation where we're going to have an oversupply almost of chips?
I think there are periods where it may feel like things are oversupplied, and within certain chip sectors, there does feel some oversupply as production accelerates in a period where maybe demand is waning. But because we are seeing a broad transformation of all products, all manufacturing, we're seeing electronics move into everything.
Right.
As a result of that, the long-term trajectory is certainly for more and more demand across all new sectors of the economy, across all new product classes, and so over time, I think there is room to grow. I think the other thing that we see happening in the U.S. and in Europe is not just a focus on semiconductors, but also a focus on the broader ecosystem. So can we also add EMS capacity? Can we add PCB capacity? What are we thinking about when it comes to packaging of these semiconductors? Because just producing them here or producing them in Europe isn't enough. We need to look at the broader ecosystem. And I think for the first time, really, we're seeing a greater focus from policymakers, from manufacturers, in this idea of let's focus not just on one piece of the supply chain, but let's focus on more holistically everything that's happening in the electronics supply chain.
Right, okay. So, you mentioned at the start of the interview, we're going through a little bit of a mini lull at the moment, but there's some people predicting that Q3 and Q4 we're going to see an uptick. Samsung's got big predictions for the memory market, etc. Where do you see that playing out throughout the rest of this year?
I think a lot of it is dependent on what happens in the broader economy. The U.S. economy, as an example, has been quite strong. It was much stronger in 23 than we anticipated. It's looking much stronger in 2024 than was initially anticipated. And so there is still a lot of strength in the underlying economy. Just last week, for example, we had a labor report that was the strongest we've had in months. So we're still adding jobs. As we add those new jobs, we're getting greater demand for products. And so that's a net benefit of everything that's going on, in that space. There's debate of whether the Fed will cut rates here.
Right.
The probability of a rate cut in June is now lower than it was, just a few weeks ago. Partly because of that strong labor report and the strong underlying economy, there's a feeling that maybe the Fed doesn't need to cut rates so quickly. There's also a sense that if they were to cut rates, that might then drive demand in interest-sensitive industries. So think housing. Maybe people have held off making purchases or investments. They're waiting to see what happens there, and so. For every house purchase, we see demand of things like appliances, other electronics coming into the household. So from a consumer standpoint, we could see demand for some of those products pick up in the second half of the year, especially if we move into a lower interest rate environment.
Yes, absolutely. Well, as you said, it's a very dynamic environment, and we're going to, continue to monitor it going forward. So I want to thank you for that so far, Sean. Coming up after the break, we're going to be talking to Dieter Weiss, who's going to give us a European view. So please hang around for that, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
For micro dispensing, there is one product line that is proven and trusted by manufacturers in semiconductor packaging, electronics assembly, medical device, and electromechanical assembly the world over. DL Technology, superior pumps and needles for the finer things in
And welcome back. I'm delighted to be joined by Dieter Weiss, who's just come in today, and he is going to give us a little bit of the European view of how the financial market is sitting. We just had a nice overview from Sean on what's happening over here stateside. Things seem to be a little bit slower in Europe. What's happening over there?
Well, let me try to make the story short, because I could talk hours about the situation. Now, what we have seen is in Europe a 13.9% revenue growth of the EMS companies in Europe in 2022. Due to our half-year survey, which we do together with IPC, we were able to identify that 1/3 of this 13.9% was price increases, whereas the rest, 9.4%, was quantity increase.
Right.
Now remember 22, we were all talking about the chip crisis.
Yes.
Now tell me, where did all these chips come from if we have never had such a high increase in quantity in the last 10 years? 9.4% in quantity. That is unbelievable high. And in 2023, we again now, as we just finished the survey, in the survey we got results from 35% of EMS production value, and they had 12.4% revenue increase.
Right.
But we know that normally only those companies report their numbers who have good numbers.
Yes.
So what we do in the extrapolation of the full numbers, we get this number down to 10.9%. And again, 10.9% is a brilliant number.
Right,
Yeah?
right.
So I really have to ask myself, what chip crisis? Yeah? And what we saw in the middle of 23 was that a lot of OEMs realized that their stocks were filled up to the rim.
Absolutely.
And they started to pull the brakes.
Yep.
We have seen a couple of public companies who had to give revenue and profit warnings due to the fact that their customers were all of a sudden saying, well, we don't want
need
it in 23 anymore, we want it in 24.
Right.
So, and we had as well a lot of smaller companies who in the second half of 23 said, well, where have all the orders gone? Yeah? We are getting nervous over here in Europe. And by the way, I just read last week the latest 10K of Jabil for the second quarter, their second quarter, which is not a calendar, second quarter, it is December to February. They had 16.8% minus in revenues.
Yes.
So it is not just a European phenomenon. It is a full phenomenon that due to this so-called chip crisis, all of a sudden the procurement managers of all the OEMs, they threw out a lot of hot air orders just to make sure that they had sufficient supply.
Well,
and now they
invented,
realized
yeah.
that it
Yeah.
was all up in the air,
Yeah.
and then they pulled the brakes.
Yeah.
And now we see, what we are seeing at the moment is now that the bullwhip effect is now going down.
Yes.
And the demand is tanking.
Yes.
And when people ask me, where are the orders which we are normally supposed to manufacture in 24, my answer is, you manufactured them in 23 already.
Yes.
That is a problem.
Yes.
Yeah? And we have not seen the bottom of it. The bottom will come at the end of the second quarter this year.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things I mentioned to Sean in the last segment. He said that basically there's quite a few companies looking at Q3 and Q4 to start seeing things starting to uptick a bit. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, what we see is slowly the stocks are going down, and in the third and the first quarter, demand will pick up again, and hopefully, we will see a normal situation by the end of the year.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yes.
I have to say we have one problem over here. There is one smart company, one distributor, yeah, it's an American company, who all of a sudden runs around in Europe and spreads the rumor we will have a new chip crisis end of the year, which will be even bigger than the one we had last time. And that in a situation where everybody still has everything up to the rim. Even the EMS companies, they still have much higher raw materials store than they normally have. So I don't want to step into this subject too much, but I can only ask the people, don't fall for those arguments, because there is other reasons why this distributor is spreading the rumor.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one of the legacies of the last chips crisis was the fact that we all got a lot more intelligent about managing that inventory and tracing where the components are coming from and the availability of them, etc. So next time round we're going to be a little bit smarter, I would hope.
Yes, I hope so. See, we always have had semiconductors with delivery times of up to 80 weeks.
Right.
And we will continue to see that. But you cannot generalize this. Yeah? We will see some demand increasing in the mature semiconductors, which is 40 to 200 nanometers. That is picking up a little more. Yeah. But other than that, it's nothing unusual, and I can only recommend to everybody who's being told by their suppliers that the delivery dates are going to explode. Take 2 or 3 brokers, demand those part numbers which you badly need, demand them from the brokers and see what the outcome is. I did that during the last chip crisis, and there were several distributors who had delivery times of 40 weeks, and I got quantities of 5,000 from a broker within 3 working days. Yeah, I didn't take the offer because what should I do with the semiconductors? I'm a market researcher. Right. But anyhow, the message I bring: don't fall for these stupid arguments. We need to make sure that we have a more quiet and normal business.
Normal business instead of these peaks and troughs. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Everything else doesn't help the industry. Yeah. Neither the OEMs nor the EMS.
So Sean and you both do work for IPC in doing this type of research. So do you collaborate a lot, and do you agree with each other's view on it?
We do collaborate a lot, and I think we do agree. And I think it's also, to some of the things that Dieter said, we've moved into a different paradigm on how we think about some of these things. And so, we talk about higher inventory levels. I don't think we need to get back to the pre-pandemic levels that we saw. I mean, companies are showing a propensity and a willingness to carry slightly higher inventory levels than they might have. Yes. Now if things get direly worse, then maybe they'll be looking to shed some of that cost. But you're seeing across all industries really a desire to hold higher inventory levels, to have slower inventory turns, and so. Yes. We need to recognize that we're not just comparing today's metrics to 2019 metrics, but that we're in a different environment and companies are behaving a little bit differently than they might have in the past.
I think you're right. There's a much bigger, higher mix capacity out there at the moment. There's lots of new applications coming in. People don't know what they're going to be building in 6 months' time. So having that inventory on hand is probably makes some sense. Certainly with some devices that they'll be using on a regular basis. But anyway, gentlemen, it's always great to catch up with you. You've got a regular report that comes out every quarter, is it, Dieter, that people can sign up to from Informa?
We have the survey report, which has just come out, is available from Informa. By the way, we prefer not to sell the report. We prefer to give it away for free.
Okay.
Because every participant, all companies who participate in the survey, get it for free.
Of course.
Yeah. So, and that's the agreement we have with IPC. We want to help the industry to make better decisions by having qualified data.
Right.
That is the main objective. And I've just spoken yesterday with Sanjay Huprikar, who is my main contact at IPC, because he's the president of Europe and South Asia of IPC. And he's supporting our work very, very much. And the fact that we have such qualified data is definitely the work as well of Sanjay, who is helping us over here to do this. And we are in close communication with Sean and with Mark, because we are looking at the US as well. We are working on US data at the moment. We hope to have a list of all US EMS companies, including Mexico and Canada, by the end of September, and then we can take it from there and decide what can we do over here in the United States to develop a survey similar to what we do in Europe.
Yes, so you're getting the same
to
data,
help the EMS industry in the United States better. So there is definitely a lot to look forward for.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think you both do a great job, and I want to thank you both for coming in today, for sure. So, coming up after the break, we're going to be paying a tribute to the late Michael Ford, who left us in January. Michael was a very close friend of mine and colleague, and as I get many new technologies coming across my desk, he was always my first phone call. We'll be listening to some of the comments and from some of the people who worked with Michael coming up after the break.
The Arch FX manufacturing platform, processing over 1 trillion data points each month, bringing value to every level of your organization. That's manufacturing insights for tomorrow.
Imagine the competitive advantages of producing high-mix and high-volume PCB assembly on a single SMT line, running non-stop, even during changeovers. It's available now from the only maker in the world providing mixed production SMT line solutions complete with full dual printing, SPI, pick and place, reflow, AOI and board handling machinery for different product dual lane processing in the smallest footprint possible. Make more PCB assemblies with less time, less space, less investment.
Michael Ford passed away on Saturday, January 27th. He was 62 years old. Michael had a significant presence within the electronics manufacturing community, with his deep, insightful knowledge of the many challenges with digital transformation, and his ability to explain complex issues in language that made it easy to comprehend.
That's what I loved when working with him. Sometimes team ends up in a situation with, let's say, different opinions, maybe conflicting, and then Michael was the one with a clear vision, finding the commonalities, also finding where things complement each other, and then finding the way how to resolve the issue and come to an agreement that I think everyone finally was able to carry on with.
I've often thought that the Japanese culture of collaboration and so forth, definitely he took that with him from his time in Japan, because of all the people I've dealt with in our 27-year corporate history, I can honestly say I've never seen anyone with Michael's skill in being in maybe a committee meeting or an industry discussion where there's a lot of strong opinions and perhaps heated, or even inside the company with colleagues when people are expressing opinions. He had an amazing ability to keep those discussions going, no matter how heated or whatever was said, in a positive way where it diffused things and it kept it such that people were heard. No, everyone always felt they were heard, and yet it moved forward. And I thought of all his gifts, I've really never seen anyone able to do that consistently the way that he did.
Typically, he was the smartest person in the room, but he never made you feel like he was the smartest person in the room. You know, he never made you feel anything less.
His contributions to standards committees, columns, articles, panel discussions, and many presentations at conferences around the world will leave an indelible mark upon the industry for many years to come. Michael was widely credited as one of the key driving forces behind the development and adoption of the CFX standard by the industry. But he was also actively involved in anti-counterfeit, supply chain standards, and more recently in digital twin and AI.
It is not only CFX, it's this picture of standards all around SMT manufacturing. So starting with CFX, but traceability, digital twin, IPC 2581, critical components, security. It's the entire picture and covering, I would say, almost all the processes that are relevant for SMT. And I think that is, from my point of view, what he did for the industry, that he put all of that together into one big picture, and not just the picture of standalone pieces, but all these pieces linked together and making sense together.
What are Michael's main achievements with IPC? They're numerous. If you look at the portfolio of standards that we have right now for Factory of the Future, ranging from digital twin, traceability, we have the cybersecurity mitigation threat standard, CFX, you can see the logo behind me. If you read the words in those standards, and if you knew Michael, it's his voice. His voice and his thumbprint is going to be on these standards for decades to come.
One of the most memorable moments that acted as a precursor to CFX was the panel discussion at APEX when Michael was working for Mentor Graphics and surprised everyone when he suddenly produced the OML black box.
So what I see as being the key thing for the future, and actually, if you bear with me, I actually have it.
We're going to get a product here.
I have it in the box. So, here, you saw it here first. This is a box that I can take from here. I can put it next to any machine in this building. I plug in the power, I plug in the connector, and I can get the open manufacturing language data straight out of that machine and straight into any existing MES or ERP system.
That's so funny you bring that up. Yes, Michael and I used to speak about that. Yeah, it was a complete surprise, and Michael he did a good job, as he always did, except that at that moment he was doing it for another company. But yes, it was a surprise, and we laughed about that for years afterwards, actually.
Yeah.
And actually, and ironically, that sort of led to CFX.
Michael did have a very quiet demeanor, but he did have one tell, described by his former boss at Sony Technology Centre in the UK. Mike was in the early days a quiet person. It was mostly a little cheeky grin he used to give when he was particularly right about something, which, to be honest, he was most of the time. He was such an innovative, groundbreaking, brilliantly clever engineer who thought through everything. He knew all the answers. He was so smart.
I have been the recipient of that smile several times, so I know exactly which one it is.
Joel Scutchfield, General Manager of Co-Young Americas, recalls working with Michael during his days with Sony.
In true Michael fashion, that motto that I try to follow, speak softly, carry a big stick, and the old Teddy Roosevelt saying, and he was very much that, very mild demeanor, but he could back it up, and if he needed to, crank up a few more cylinders, he could do that, and then watch out, right? Yeah. I'll always remember, Michael showing up at that time. I think he had one suit. It was a navy blue suit. I think he had one tie and a box full of white dress shirts, and it was always the blue suit, the white shirt, the black shoes they weren't really dress shoes. They weren't really cross trainers. They were kind of in between at that time. It was really before the Skechers fad, but he had something figured out. And the white socks just capped it off, right? And I never said a word to him about it. I never kidded him about it. I never acted like it was anything but normal.
To many, Michael Ford was regarded as a mentor, a visionary, a colleague and a friend. The legacy he leaves behind and the debt of gratitude we all owe him is enormous.
Well, it's so vast. Whenever anyone would see Michael on video in your interviews when he was at his home, the whole wall behind him was IPC, awards and the standards that he worked on. It's enormous. I think the design through supply chain counterfeit and CFX, I think he would probably consider those the things that he was most proud of, in particular CFX, no doubt. Yeah. But I think that, again, it gets back to that belief that he truly loved collaborating with people, and he really did love the work he did with the IPC and the support that they provide the industry. He just believed in it, absolutely. Yeah. But I think that we'll be benefiting from his work, frankly, forever down the timeline, because he was on the more digital, forward-leaning work that's going to be the foundation of everything going forward with, well, frankly, AI, and as you said, the counterfeit issues that are, and cyber that are grappling, and people are grappling with. So he really will be standing on the benefits of his work for a long time.
For years, Michael carried us on his shoulders, and he marched us forward with his vision. And now it's our job to do that with his legacy.
There are things that we can have, but can't keep. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment